Well, we're privileged today to have with us award-winning Australian singer, songwriter, speaker, worship leader and mum, Bel Thomson. She's experienced postnatal depression and come through the other side. Bel, thanks so much for joining us today. We'd really love to sort of hear so much more about your journey, but before we do, you've been a songwriter for how long now?
I started writing songs when I was just a teenager, so
Right.
that's a long time now.
It is a long time. So you've been doing it for a while. What actually sort of got you into the whole music industry and the love of music?
Sure. Well, I mean, I've been playing instruments since I was young. My family's not musical at all, but my parents noticed when I would sit down and watch Play School that it was like serious business. I'd get out all my instruments and I'd be like, hold it, people.
Love it.
And yeah, so Mum's like, maybe we should get her some piano lessons, and it kind of went from there.
Well, there's the benefit of TV.
Yes, exactly. I know. Makes it sound good. I'd love to hear a little bit about your story, because I know when you were just a brand new baby, you had some sort of trouble with your hands. Can you tell us about that?
So, well, and I didn't know this story till I was like 16 myself, but when I was born, I had something wrong with my hands, and every night they would swell up and turn blue. And so I was scheduled to have this operation, and so I'm a little newborn. I'm my parents' first baby. They were pretty anxious about it, and they had actually just become Christians, and they'd started going to a local church. And the night before the operation, they took me just to the church service and mentioned afterwards, "Oh, hey, Bel's got this operation happening tomorrow. We're a bit anxious about it." And one of the guys said, "Oh, so have you prayed about it?" And they were like, "Oh, you know, would God even care? Like, this is our little baby." And they were like, "He would totally care." So they prayed for me. And the next morning, when normally every morning my hands are swollen, I couldn't move them as a baby. And Mum went in and was like, "That's so weird, her hands haven't swollen up." She's like, "Well, that'd be right. The day we're going to the hospital, you know, the doctors won't believe me." So she bundles me up and having no clue that, you know, God had actually answered their prayer. So they got there, the doctors were like, "She's totally healed." And so I never needed the operation.
Wow.
I know.
And goosebumps.
Yeah. And you've used your hands like
totally
for so much music, which is
That's what my
fantastic.
dad said. Yeah, he said he knew from that moment that God was going to use my hands for something.
Wow.
That,
Yeah. He has. Now that you're a first-time mum yourself, how was that journey?
Yeah, well, look, I was so excited to become a mum, and my husband and I, in the years before that, we'd been touring around Australia. We'd had so many adventures. We were doing music full time, travelling all over the place, and so we had delayed becoming parents while that was all happening, because we were like, it's probably a bit hard to have a baby in the boot of the car next to the guitar and stuff.
I think it's been done before, I'm sure.
Well, it kind of happens now. Our 2-year-old's in there, but so we had delayed it, and so by the time I was finally pregnant, I was so excited, and then I suppose I had such a great pregnancy. So when we actually had our baby, it came as a complete shock to me that I would get postnatal depression, because I so wanted to be a mum.
Yeah. It's interesting that sort of you touched on postnatal depression, because you've had that. I guess I wanted to ask some questions about sort of some of the symptoms. Did you recognise them? How have you gotten through it?
Yeah. Again, I thought postnatal depression was something that really strange or people that had emotional problems kind of got. And for me, I guess it started at birth, really. So I went from, I was fit, I was healthy, I was the poster child for I was going to have a natural birth. And, you know, I had this birth plan, which I found the other day and was like,
Fell through real, right?
Right. You could not have got a more opposite experience. So we had a pretty rough birth. And I think really for me that was very traumatic and a rough start to motherhood. So our baby wasn't breathing when he was born, and so he needed to be rushed straight off for medical care. And as a result, I didn't get to hold him or nurse him or even see him when he was born. It's very traumatic for all of us involved, including my husband. And when I finally met him, and I was put under a general anaesthetic because it was life or death situation. Wow. So when I finally met our son, I was wheeled up. I was still in the bed after the emergency C-section, and they wheeled me up and said, "This is your baby." And I looked, I still wasn't allowed to hold him because he was hooked up to all these different monitors. And I just thought, what has happened to my healthy, beautiful baby? I felt like I was looking at someone else's baby. And for me, it was like from that moment, just this blackness set in. I felt incredibly just ill from all of the drugs and stuff that had needed to be a part of saving his life. And while I was thankful for that, I just really grieved that, particularly in those first moments, I felt like I'd let him down, that I wasn't able to be there to hold him and tell him that I loved him.
And from that experience, what happened when you got home?
From that point, that was really the start. That blackness just didn't lift for me. And it was every day accompanied by just this overwhelming anxiety of everything. And, you know, I think exhaustion and feeling overwhelmed is, now I realise, I think that's a part of when you have your first baby. You have no idea. I had no idea what I was doing, and certainly I didn't think it was going to be nearly as hard as it was. Like, why didn't somebody tell me? Or I just didn't have ears to hear. So, yeah, the blackness, the tears, it was beyond the baby blues. You know, I was in tears every day, every time I'd think about that birth experience, and just feeling like I was in completely over my head.
And you've sort of had the opportunity to write a song which has reflected on that, haven't you?
Yeah, well, it's because I'm a musician, this has all come out in the music.
Yeah.
So I used to strap my baby into the baby carrier every day and just sit down at the piano, and I would cry and cry and just pour it into songs. And so this album that I've just released, this was my journey through postnatal depression, and I had no idea. I was going to be releasing an album about this.
We'd love to listen to just about 30 seconds of it. I think we've got just to play a patch of it. That sounds absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
What inspired you to write that song?
I wrote that 7 weeks after having my son, and I had just been to see my obstetrician for our final post-birth checkup, and I had told him that I was still in tears every day when I thought about the birth, and that I wasn't able to be there to hold my son. And he said to me, "Bel, you may not have been able to hold your son, but the whole time God was holding him."
Oh, wow. Amen.
And for me, I went home, and as I started to process that, it was exactly what I needed to hear to start to reframe the experience and just recognise that actually God cared deeply about what I was going through, that he was there holding not only my son but me through the whole experience. And really that was a big part of me processing and being able to work it through as I started to re-engage with the fact that he really did care about what was going on in my world.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful story.
Bel, I was just going to ask, what advice might you give to women who are going through postnatal depression right now?
Please, quickly, yeah.
Yeah, quickly.
I think motherhood is difficult, and that's normal. Motherhood is hard, so and it gets so much better. It's like a pair of shoes.
We have to learn to forgive ourselves, don't we? It's such a big journey. Look, thank you so much for joining us today. We have loved having you here. Ladies, a pleasure, and as always, thank you for joining us. If you've got anything you want to jump onto Facebook and have your say, and don't forget, the website for Bel's music is on the screen. We will see you next time. Bye for now.